Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have something a little special for you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the historic factor of Dogman, Bigfoot. I'm also going to share a couple of encounters, but I also want to share a kind of glitch in the Matrix, sort of. We've been talking about parallel universes lately, and Dogman, Sasquatch, other cryptids possibly traveling in and out. Well, is a glitch in the Matrix possibly the cause and effect of these things happening? I don't know, but I have one, and it is super interesting. Tomorrow, I have a special guest coming on. He and I are going to discuss everything from Dogman, Sasquatch, to religious beliefs in these creatures. We are going to go so friggin' deep that we may not come back. Just kidding. But I'm going to do today's upload as like a precursor to tomorrow. So on with the links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. All those links are in the description below. I also have a second channel for creepypasta, fan fiction, scary voice acting, stories that just don't fit on this channel. Now, if that's anything that you're into, follow that link. Give those stories a listen. You may or may not like what you hear. Last but not least, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 and 2 audiobook is available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. It was written by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. The links to those are in the description below as well. Now, I've taken enough of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Today's first part of the upload. Bigfoot, the historical record. Sightings of a giant, hairy, bipedal animal predates the modern era. Over 170 years ago, the Arkansas wild man terrified residents of that state. The first published report in 1846 claimed a footprint was discovered in eastern Arkansas that measured 22 inches. In 1851, the Vermont Watchman and State Journal reported that two men were hunting Greene County, Arkansas, when they saw something bearing the unmistakable likeness of a human chasing a herd of cattle. It was gigantic, the body being covered with hair and had long locks that fairly enveloped its neck and shoulder. The creature stopped, stared at them for a few moments, and ran back into the patch of woods. With great speed, leaping from 12 to 14 feet at a time, the newspaper went on to explain sightings of the wild man had been reported in St. Francis, Greene, and Poinsett County since 1834. Many local residents believed the wild man was a human survivor of the great 1811 to 1812 New Madrid earthquake, who had turned feral while living in the woods. Two prominent Memphis men organized a search party to try to capture it, but nothing else is known of their attempt. According to the Ashland, Ohio Union, the elusive creature was spotted again near the Sunflower Prairie during the winter of 1856, and some men gave chase with hunting dogs. The wild man tried to flee across the frozen Brant Lake, but the ice was too thin, and he retreated back to the bank. The first man who arrived reported seeing an athletic man about 6'4", covered in hair of brownish cast. Although within easy range, the hunter decided to capture the wild man rather than shoot him. It was a bad idea, according to the newspaper. The wild man bounded upon him, dragged him from the saddle, and tore him in a dreadful manner, gouging one of his eyes and biting a large piece of his shoulder. He then threw the saddle and brindle of the horse, and mounted, set off into the mountains at full speed, guiding the horse with the pace of a sapling. 12 years later, the Mississippi wild man was encountered in southwest Mississippi, according to the Cambria Freeman. A similar creature had been seen near Vicksburg 1 year before. In the former incident, some hunters were following a pack of dogs hot on the trail of an unknown animal when they discovered a footprint in the mud. It appeared similar to the track of a human foot, and they observed also that the toes of one foot turned backwards. Many local residents believed the wild man was a human survivor of the great 1811 through 1812 New Madrid earthquake who had turned feral while living in the woods. When the dogs finally bayed their prey, the men beheld a frightful-looking creature of about the average height of a man, but of far greater muscular development, standing menacingly in front of the dogs. It had long hair flowing from its head, reaching to its knees. Its entire body also seemed to be covered with hair of 2 or 3 inch length, which was dark brown in color. From its upper jaw protracted 2 very large tusks, several inches long. The wild man ran towards the Mississippi River when the men advanced, but the dogs once again bayed him at the river bank. When the dogs attacked, it reached forward and grabbed one of them, pressing it against its tusk, piercing it through and killing it instantly. The hunters fired several shots, and the creature jumped into the river and remained submerged for several minutes. Suddenly it surfaced, uttering shrieks which almost petrified the pursuers in terror. No similar sound had ever come to the ears of the men, who were familiar with the howl of a wolf, the whine of a panther, and the hoarse bellowing of an alligator. After sinking and rising several times, it swam to the Louisiana shore and disappeared. Some time later, other wild men were reported near Vicksburg and Meadville. What's interesting about Mississippi wild man is people believe it to be an unknown creature, not a feral human, and did not ridicule the witness. The newspaper even suggested that the area around Meadville is suitable for such animals. Throughout Franklin County, there are retreats especially adapted to accommodation of wild beasts, such as the high barren hills, ravines, and dense vine-matted swamp of the Homochito River. Just want to interject on something really quick. Back when we were talking and everyone was thinking about when I brought up the Hood County, Texas attack, the gentleman who was killed, and the county sheriff is saying it's a bobcat. They ruled out homicide, suicide, yet the Texas Wildlife Division is saying, no, it's not a bobcat, a panther. They're saying, no, it's not a panther or mountain lion, yada, yada. But what was interesting is there was a nickel, he was tore up very badly, but there was a nickel-sized hole in his chest. It was not a bullet hole, but it was a nickel-sized hole. So now I've been hearing lots and reading lots lately about these wild men / Sasquatch / caveman, troglodyte, whatever. And these tusks have been popping up more and more. And it's just kind of interesting because maybe, just maybe, the guy in Hood County, Texas, in Lippin, was savaged by a wild man and not a dog man. Who knows? A funny thing, though, and we'll get back to some more, but I remember when Victor was talking about his last hunt. And last night I was talking about the Alabama 1877 22-foot Sasquatch that was killed in the swamps. I actually emailed the newspaper to get a copy of that, and I'll be talking about that probably in the next couple of days. But that just kind of verified what Victor had said with the 19-foot. And it was labeled as a troglodyte. And then some subscriber, I believe it was a woman, I think her name was quote unquote Karen. Probably not though, but she was definitely a Karen. And she proceeded to tell us what troglodyte meant. Like, we all don't know. I mean, according to, her, we are imbeciles. So, but if she, Karen, the imbecile, was familiar with the troglodyte, it's a cave-dwelling, like, wild man. Just perfectly fits. Anyway, back to the upload. This is where things get real interesting, guys. Albert Ostman, circa 1893 to 1975, was a Canadian prospector who reported that he was abducted by a Sasquatch and held captive for 6 days. He stated that the event took place near Toba Inlet, British Columbia, 1924. Here's the encounter. In 1924, Albert Ostman, a lumberjack and woodsman, went to the area for vacation. Ostman had heard stories about man-beasts who supposedly roamed these woods but refused to believe in them. As Ostman lay asleep one evening, a Sasquatch reportedly picked him up and carried him off while he was sleeping in his sleeping bag. Ostman was carried in his sleeping bag across the country for 3 hours by this Squatch. The Sasquatch dropped Ostman down by the plateau. Standing around him was a family of 4 of these creatures. Albert was kept captive by the Sasquatch family. The captors were 3 adults and a child, which held Ostman captive for 6 days. One of the Bigfoot was reported to be 8 feet tall. Ostman did not use his gun on them, as they had not done him any harm. He stayed with the family for a week. Ostman ate sweet-tasting grass that they gave him. According to Ostman, the female Sasquatch washed and stacked leaves. Albert escaped by making a large male Sasquatch groggy by feeding him some snuff. He didn't tell his story for more than 24 years after it happened, for fear of being thought that he was crazy. As more Sasquatch stories appeared in the press, Albert decided to tell his story to a local newspaper, The Province, in 1957. On August 1957, police magistrate A.M. Neesmith wrote an affidavit which states, "I found Mr. Ostman to be a man of 64 years of age, in full possession of his mental faculties, pleasant manner, and good sense of humor. I questioned Mr. Ostman thoroughly in reference to the story given by Mr. Green. I cross-examined him and used every means to endeavor to find a flaw in either his personality or his story, but I could find neither." Albert Ostman also signed a solemn declaration indicating that his account of the Sasquatch story was true, under oath and by virtue of the Canadian Evidence Act. In 2007, the skeptic Joe Nickel characterized the story as more likely the result of an imagination than a recollection. Critics of Ostman note that he did not make the event public until 1857, 33 years later after he said it took place. Primatologist John Napier states that Ostman's story fails to convince me primarily on the grounds of limited food resources available. Bigfoot researcher Peter Brine cannot accept Ostman's story without more evidence. Well, primatologist and Bigfoot researcher Peter Brine, or whoever his name is, ass nuts. Why? You weren't there. Why can't you believe it? It sounds pretty freaking real to me. And then the Napier dude, there's not limited food sources. Bullshit, there's limited food sources in the woods in Canada. These things can hunt. They can eat berries. They've lived. Like, they'd be saying like a Native American small pod or tribe or whatever, just still living like in the wild not even Native Americans. Let's just say a small group of indigenous people, any country you pick, put them, this small indigenous group, 5 people, 2 female, 3 males, 1 child out of it. So it's 2 female, 2 males, 1 child. It doesn't matter the sex of the child. You put them anywhere other than a barren desert, and I guarantee they will thrive, because they have not forgotten the basic instincts that we're given. I mean, they've lived in the wild. They know pretty much by watching other animals what is edible and what is not. And they can make rudimentary lodging. So, I mean, a primatologist is claiming it to be BS. And Peter Brine, Byrne, B-Y-R-N-E, dick nuts. If you're a Bigfoot researcher, why are you going to say, cannot accept Ostman's story with more evidence? Dude, you're an ass. All right? You should have no business researching. Okay? Well, yeah, have all the business you want researching, but at least, I mean, you're believing that there's a 9-foot creature in the woods. We are already labeled crazy. Well, why can't you believe this, guys? Because it sounds pretty freaking real to me. And he didn't share it. Years later, he did. He wasn't looking for fame and fortune. It's just, I don't even know. People, the gall of some people, I tell you. Today's third part of the upload. About 10 years ago, in a little town outside of Toulouse, France, right after dark, waiting for a restaurant to open, our big group of family Americans took a walk up a hill to look at the town graveyard from the road. Walking back, we could see the whole town below us, the road ahead lined with stone walls in front of houses. About 100 yards ahead, illuminated by a streetlight, I see a huge black dog-shaped thing leave our side of the sidewalk, lope in the middle of the street, raise up on its hind legs, and quickly scale and disappear over an 8-foot stone wall. There were cars and bushes and gates to use for visual scale, and this thing was tall, like 7 to 8 feet. Picture the werewolf from the film Prisoner of Azkaban. Yep, spot on. My family was chattering away about whatever, but I said, "Did you guys see that?" And my son says, "Oh yeah, that was a fucking werewolf." We walked by the same spot a minute later, and everyone was laughing at us, but screw that. Today's fourth encounter. I had an encounter about 20-30 minutes away from the hot spot of Taylor, Mississippi. I was 15 years old, and myself, my uncle, and a couple of cousins went coon hunting about 15 minutes down the road from my house. We got there and shot the shit for a little bit before turning out the hounds. I had a black and tan that I've never seen back down from anything, but when I opened the door to the dog box, he wouldn't budge, and his hair was rolled up all the way down his back. I thought maybe a coyote, because he was missing part of his ear because one of them. Then a smell hit my nose that I can't even begin to describe. It was just horrible. So I got curious and shined my light to the stand of pines about 20-25 yards ahead, and got eye shine that slowly started to rise and stopped about 7 to 8 feet. And I don't know what to think, so I told my uncle, who got his expensive light and shined it, and we all about shit ourselves. What we saw was brown in color and had the head of a German shepherd or a husky. I swear the thing smiled at us. It wasn't snarling or growling, just sitting there. I guess it finally got tired of the light, because it let out this kind of rattling growl that made us run to the trucks and fly home. Needless to say, the dogs slept in the house that night. Today's fifth part of the upload is a very interesting glitch in the Matrix. To begin my story, I must tell you that I don't drink alcohol. I'm healthy. I've never done any drugs, so I'm sure I was sober and sane. I usually leave my dog outside for the day. He just loves the grass and the sun. But at night, I take him to my bedroom to sleep with me and close the door so he won't walk around at night destroying things. A couple of months ago, I remember that I left my dog outside at night because my nephew is scared of dogs and he was going to spend the night. So I'm 100% sure my dog didn't sleep in my room at all. Here's the glitch. So the morning, I wake up alone in my room. I opened my room's door and heard my big sister yelling at my dog, telling him to get out. My middle sister was in the living room, just downstairs from where my room is. As I'm walking down the stairs, my big sister tells me to give him a heads up next time I let the dogs get out of my room because he scared my nephew. So I told her that I didn't let him out of my room because he didn't sleep there at all, and that I thought she had let him inside from the backyard. Both of my sisters looked at me with a lot of confusion in their face and told me that when I opened the door, my dog came running down the stairs and that the backyard door was closed, so he couldn't have gotten inside any other way. They were 100% sure that he came from my room. Here's my side of the story. I explained that there was no way my dog slept there with me, and that I couldn't have noticed him because he always makes a lot of noise with his paws, and always wakes me up by licking my face. As soon as I make any move, my dog runs to the door, so I'll let him out. But I'm sure that there was nothing in the doorway when I woke up. So when I opened the door and heard the yelling, I just thought that he ran inside because my sister usually leaves the backyard door slightly open, and my dog just has to scratch it to open it further so he can get inside. So that was my explanation of the whole thing. My sister, big sister's explanation, she tells me that there was no way the dog could have run inside because no one had opened the backyard door at all that morning, so he must have been inside already. My middle sister's explanation. She tells me that she was just in the living room and that the dog never went upstairs, as she would have seen him, or at least heard him with his loud claws going up the stairs. And he's a big dog, not one to go unnoticed. And that she only saw him go down the stairs just as I opened my room's door. Here's my second theory. So I told her that even if the dog was inside all night for some strange reason, hypothetically thinking that someone opened the door, didn't see him come inside, or I forgot to let him in, he couldn't have been in my room because I would have definitely noticed. So he must have slept outside of my room in the hallway. The hallway leads to my big sister's room. My big sister's second explanation. She told me there was no way that the dog was sleeping in the hallway because she would have seen him in the morning when she got out of her room. Side note, if my dog would have slept in the hallway, there was no way my sister could have not noticed him. He would have greeted her or ran downstairs as soon as he heard some noise or voices. So where did my dog come from? I don't think he has learned how to open doors and be as quiet as a ninja to get to my room unnoticed just to go downstairs as I open my door. Usually scratches at my door when it's closed. Why didn't he do that this time? Where was he to begin with? How did he teleport to my hallway from the backyard? We're still confused to this day. They think I might have forgotten that I let him in that night, but I'm 100% sure I made the conscious decision to not let him in that night because of my nephew having dog phobia. Tonight's final part of the upload. This fits in perfectly, and I'll tell you why. It's a Dogman or possible Dogman subscriber encounter. I was recording and it blip email. It came up, and I was actually reading the glitch in the Matrix, and I got the notification that a subscriber had sent an encounter. Just weird, coincidental, I guess. And I'm kind of doing an off upload today, just not all cryptids. So I just found it rather interesting that it kind of fit together like it did. So anyway, here is tonight's last part of the upload, a subscriber submission. Hello, Jeff. This is a true story from when I was on Lake Champlain. I would go to Lake Champlain and stay on the lake in cabins with friends every year when I was younger. We really enjoyed it. This was back in the mid-90s. Me and my friend Tom went to our normal place, the Sportsman Cabins, and Virgins, Vermont, as we always did. I can remember the place being packed with fishermen, as there was a bass tournament that week. Shortly after we arrived, my friend had to leave for a family emergency, so I was going to be alone for a few days at the cabin. There was a group of fishermen next to the cabin that were in the bass tournament. I kind of didn't want to hang around. I don't know why. That night I was alone. I decided to go down to my favorite fishing area. It was a tube that went into backwater from the road, a very popular fishing area on the lake. When I drove by before parking, I noticed that no one was there that night. Usually it was packed with fishermen. I was like, okay, I guess this is the best spot tonight. I parked my truck about 100 yards down the road where the area was. I walked down and set up my fishing pole. It was a great night, a nice breeze off the lake and the lights from the bridge to New York reflecting on the water. I was enjoying everything. Behind where I was fishing was a backwater area where the tube from the lake went in, and behind that was farmland. I was just enjoying the night. Nothing was biting, but it was a really nice night. I noticed that in the distance I heard a howling sound. It was pretty far away, so I wasn't worried. Not sure what it was, maybe coyote or something. The lake had such a nice breeze I could remember the lights from the distant bridge shimmering with the water. I noticed the howling noise kept getting closer. I knew that behind me was backwater, so it would be impossible for anything to cross that, but the noise was still alarming. I kept hearing this howling sound getting closer and sounding more like it was from something larger than a coyote. I've spent a lot of time in the woods, and I've heard coy dog and coyote, so I'm pretty familiar with them. It was at this point on the little edge, as the depth of the sound seemed to come from a larger, more threatening animal. You could imagine being all alone and hearing a howling sound steadily getting closer. Definitely was getting concerned. At this point, I'm looking behind me from where the noise is coming. No cars came down the road. That made it even more scarier. The howling was getting so close that it not only sounded menacing, but possibly life-threatening. I could remember it seemed to be surrounding me, and I thought that's not possible. At this point, I was suddenly feeling like I had to leave or face what was coming. I reeled in the lines and ran as fast as I could to the truck, slammed everything into the back and jumped in. This felt like a death run. When you believe something is behind and will catch you, it is scary. I started the truck and drove back to the cabins. As I was about to pull in, I noticed the fishermen next to the cabin, all out on the table, staring at me as I was about to turn, so I kept going and took the bridge to New York over to Port Henry. I parked at the first place that I could pull off. Ironically, was the Champ billboard of all the sightings in the lake. I stayed there for an hour and a half before I felt safe to return to the cabin. I believe something was out there. Sometimes it's what you don't see that's the most scariest. I'm not sure what it was, but it was large, and you wouldn't want to see what it was. Love your channel. Listen every night. Thanks, man. Really quick, that area is freaking gorgeous. It's a half an hour north of me. The nighttime has some of the best catfish, bullhead fishing. So it was definitely a weird night for this dude because, you know, you cast off and you're honestly catching a bullhead or a catfish or an eel, something, you know. Port Henry is a beautiful little area, and if you don't know, if you're not familiar with Champ is a aquatic cryptid, which is said to resemble Nessie from the Loch Ness. And there's been numerous sightings, and I know right where he's talking about the Port Henry Champ sighting sign. It's so friggin' cool up there, and I know what it's like to be alone and hear those howling coming from Vermont, and I am convinced that there's something very terrifying, very evil in the mountains of Vermont. Do I think a Dogman and a Sasquatch are there? Abso-friggin-lutely. Do I think something else is a little more terrifying out there? Yes, I do. When I was 18. I was 18. It was the summer. End of the summer. And I was coming home from my parents' house in Maine. And instead of taking the bus, parents would go up, drop me off, stay a couple weeks, and then come back home. I would work for the summer and stay there and then take a bus and go home. I decided that it would be a fun trip to hitchhike, and I hitchhiked from Bar Harbor, Maine, to Mexico, Maine, into New Hampshire, just the tip of New Hampshire, the end tip, into Vermont, which was very, very quick. I mean, God, it was like so fast. I got a couple rides in Maine so it didn't take that long. But when I hit Vermont and I'm walking down the thruway in Vermont, it's a double-laned highway, and I'm on the inside, and Vermont has just the most prettiest green rolling mountains, but I kept hearing this howling in the background, and it was very creepy and very sketchy. Do I think it was a Dogman or something? I honestly don't know. I really don't. I know I was sketched the hell out though, but it was a cool trip. Pretty interesting time. So, alright, I'm pretty happy with tonight's upload. A little different. Cryptids, glitch, whatever, yada yada. Kind of a warm-up for tomorrow because I'm looking forward to it. He and I had a chat about 2-3 weeks ago, and I was like, dude, do you realize how this story could have been recorded and people would have been into it? Because we literally discussed Dogman, Sasquatch, portals, Skinwalker Ranch, religion. And when I say religion, I don't mean like, hey, he's going to pray for me and this and that. What I mean is like the cryptid and symbolism in the Bible and the Book of Enoch, yada yada. Why do I keep saying that? Oh yeah, I watched Seinfeld today. Anyway, so tomorrow is going to be a badass upload, and I'm excited about it. The glitch in the Matrix, real quick, before I let you guys go. I like that one because it was, talking. One of the theories was portal travel, and me and him will talk about portal travel tomorrow. You guys are going to be happy tomorrow. Happy. All right, guys. Have a great night. And I know I sound a little better from what I sounded like last night. I sounded like absolute dog shit. I got a little bit of sleep last night. Probably won't get any tonight, but who cares? I'm still young and can stay up all the time. Just kidding. Have a good night.